Pastor Ben here. We're continuing our series tonight, even though we're not able to meet in person, on mental illness. So thank you for tuning in. We have a few guests, Luke, Deja, and Zack, that are going to be joining us tonight to share their experiences. Well, thank you, Deja, for joining us. Deja's volunteered along with Zack and Luke to share with us her experience of dealing with things like depression and anxiety and other mental health conditions. So thank you, Deja, for joining us. If we could just start out, why don't you take a couple minutes and share with us what your experience has looked like dealing with depression and anxiety?
Sure. Well, depression and anxiety, I've had it pretty much for as long as I can remember, like even into my, not really early childhood, but elementary school, middle school, I've suffered with depression and anxiety. I would say that definitely got worse kind of once high school hit, which is usually when like puberty sets in, which is pretty normal. And then, yeah, it's something I would say I still deal with to this day. Like, I don't think it's anything that I've been healed from or anything. It's not like a daily thing for me, but it's also pretty consistent, I would say, throughout the year. Depression is definitely more of something that is more of a day-to-day struggle with me, and anxiety only really kind of pops up every, like every 1 or 2 years. It's kind of random and sporadic, whereas depression is more consistent. Yeah.
And have over the years, you've been dealing with this since middle or high school. Mm-hmm. How open have you been with your friends, with your family, and what kind of response have you gotten from people in your experience?
Yeah, well, I've been doing this for a while, and it kind of has really varied throughout the years. In middle school, I didn't really know what it was, so I didn't talk to anyone about it. I just knew that I just didn't enjoy living. I didn't enjoy anything. I was kind of what I called emotionless back then, but was really just kind of a chaos of emotions that I was hiding underneath like a cover. And then in high school, I still didn't really talk about it, but every once in a while, like the more I piled my depression down and my anxiety down, my emotions down, it would kind of explode every once in a while. Then I'd kind of, in a way, have to talk about it to people. And in high school is when I saw my first therapist. And it was kind of weird, like back then, just depression, anxiety, even though I would say that even when I was a kid, that there was still a better reception than it may have been for like my mother or my father. It was still one of those things where people didn't really know how to handle it. And a lot of times people are like, oh, well, it's just like an attention-seeking behavior, or, it's just one of those things you have to kind of like work through it and like toughen up because you still have to live, you still have to exist. And so because of that mentality, it was hard for me to talk to people about it because I was like, well, if they're just going to tell me to just deal with it, then there's no point in sharing about it anyways. And with my family, it might have been different for me because I didn't grow up in the greatest home, but we just didn't talk about anything in our family, and especially I took care of my family a lot, so their needs always came before mine. But now, like when I went to college, that really kind of changed because then all of a sudden I was meeting all these other people who had also struggled with depression, anxiety, and they were very open about talking about it. And this is also when I started psychology classes, and so we were talking more about that and our own experiences with it. And that's when I kind of started to transition to understanding not only my depression and anxiety more, but also that people out there struggle with it too, because I had really felt like I was alone in what I was going through. And so now I would say I'm pretty open about it, and being married too, you just kind of have someone that you can always talk to when stuff pops up. But now I like talking with youth who also go through it because it's just a thing that people go through, and it's more normal now, and especially like in the church, it's being much better like received and understood. Because I know when I first came to youth group, I often felt just kind of the shame and still kind of like I can't really talk about it, and that it's something I shouldn't be dealing with because I am a Christian or whatever. But I feel like it's starting to change, just the mindset around it, which is really good and really healthy, I think.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's good. If we could back up, you were saying kind of earlier in your middle school years that you didn't really recognize even what it was at first. What led to you identifying exactly and pinpointing even what it was that you were experiencing? And what did that process look like for you?
Sure. Um, I feel like eventually I just realized that I was just really unhappy. And like to me that had felt like such a normal thing. And I don't remember exactly what got me questioning it, but I was just like, why am I unhappy? Why do I want to end my life? Like what is that? And so yeah, like I don't really remember because that was a while ago, but it just eventually led to me understanding that maybe it wasn't normal, because like I would look at other people's lives and realize that not everyone seemed to feel the way that I do. And that's kind of when like the isolation kind of set in, because I was like, oh well, maybe I'm just weird, or because I'm different than everybody else.
Yep, yep. And what could you share? Let's talk about maybe students who maybe they aren't individually dealing with some of these things, but they have friends in their life that are. What were some things that people in your life did, whether it's friends, family members, people at school, that you found helpful? If you could share advice for the friends of those that are dealing with those who have depression and anxiety, or any one of these things.
Yeah. Um, I guess I would say it wasn't really until college where I've ever really had anyone bring it up to me before. And that was after I was more open about being depression anxious. And I guess that for some of my closer friends, they could always just tell if I was kind of slipping or getting into a certain mood. And they were really good about being like, hey, like, have you talked to anyone about how you're really feeling in a while? Like, it's okay to talk about what you're really going through. Like, you don't
Yeah.
have to put walls up, because like people always ask, how you're doing, and we say good, and then we kind of go
Yep.
on with our
Yep.
life. But it's just those questions where they're like, no, how are you really doing? Like, what's going on with you? What do you think is causing this right now?
Okay.
And just kind of like, just those intentional questions where it's not just like, oh, hey, like, hope you're doing good, but like, what's really going on? Just being honest and vulnerable.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. So honesty, vulnerability, asking those intentional questions.
Right.
That if we can be that kind of friend that asks people those intentional questions, that can be something that's helpful. Maybe not treating you like you're some kind of strange leper, right? Right. It's being intentional, being loving with those around us. And even as you've been saying, that hopefully the stigma of mental illness is beginning to slowly be removed, not only from society, but also from the church. And that's part of why we're having these conversations, to increase our understanding about what different people are going through and how we can come alongside and help them. So being intentional about asking questions, and really caring about other people. It sounds like caring about your friends, maybe even opening our eyes to see them. So that's some really good advice. I'm going to ask you one more thing. What advice would you offer to a young person or anyone who's going to be watching this video that is dealing with any kind of mental health condition, any depression, anxiety? What would you say to them? What advice would you offer them?
Sure. I guess I would say that one of the first things I notice I do, and when I've talked to other students and people who do this, that they do as well, is they isolate themselves when the depression and anxiety kind of start to like increase in a sense, and I would recommend not doing that because I'm pretty self-aware, and over time the longer you do with it, I just kind of feel like you recognize the patterns that you go through when it kind of starts coming, because like for me it's like I isolate myself, I'm not like praying and reading my Bible as much, and I just kind of like shut down. And so I would say that if you're starting to, like if your depression is going really bad and your anxiety is overwhelming, to just talk about it. And that can be the most challenging thing. But that's the thing about these mental illnesses is when your depression and anxiousness kind of rise up is it wants you to be isolated because that's where it's most powerful, I feel like, and that's where it overwhelms you the most. And so if you can, it's most powerful. Like, give yourself the willpower to just talk to somebody about it because you're not alone in this. So many people struggle with it. Like Pastor Ben shared the statistics last Wednesday. A lot of people go through it, and the older you get, the more people you'll find. And so it's nothing to be ashamed of and afraid of because it's just not. And that's something that you come to learn and grow in. And you might not be there right now, and that's okay. But just know that people will talk to you if you just are willing to. So
That's good. That's good. Find the courage to talk to somebody. That's good. Well, Deja, I want to say thank you very much for sharing your experience and your advice. I hope students, this was very helpful to you as well. So thank you very much. All right, I'm with Luke now. And Luke, if you could take a couple minutes and share with us your experience of dealing with depression, anxiety, and mental illness in general.
Okay. So I don't actually have a whole lot of experience with depression, but anxiety is the other story. I've been dealing with that since middle school, off and on. Kind of like Deja said, it's an off and on thing, unlike depression. The anxiety kind of comes here and there. Usually for me, it seems like it's every other year for me, depending on situations and stuff like that. But yeah, since middle school is when it started. It was really bad then. And then, I've been dealing with it since then. Still deal with it now.
Could you talk about what did that anxiety look like for you when you were, let's say, when you were in middle school and it started? What did that look like in your life when you say you began to deal with anxiety?
So in middle school when it started, it really hasn't changed, but it's been. It kind of starts just kind of going through the motions. It's more of like a stomach ache. My mentality changes to where logic doesn't matter anymore. It feeds off of fear. It feeds off of worry. So that's where stomach aches happen. I wouldn't, like when I was in middle school, if we did anything remotely out of the normal, I would go into an anxiety attack, a panic attack, and I would just not be able to leave the house.
Yeah, and so when was it that your family and friends began to notice something going on in your life? What did that process look like of these things coming to light? Did they notice something, or did you go out and share it with somebody?
So it started with my family noticing, obviously, with things, me not wanting to go and do anything different or new or anything like that. The one event that pops into my mind was when I was in middle school. At some random McDonald's, we signed up for a thing where you could get on the big old screen on the XL Energy Center during the hockey game, and we randomly won out of the billions of whatever people signed up for it, and I couldn't go because my anxiety was just freaking me out, and I don't know, I still to this day don't know why I freaked out. There was no logic or reason to it, but I was nervous and I couldn't go. So that's one of the big reasons that they found. My parents started realizing, and then it was more just itself showing people because of the difference that I was. And I didn't really talk to my friends about it because I didn't feel like they went through it. No one was talking about it really when I was in middle school or high school. So.
Yeah. And so was there anyone in your life that you found they acted in a helpful way towards you? And if not, what advice would you share again with people maybe who aren't specifically dealing with anxiety, but they have a friend who has anxiety? How can they be helpful to them in their life, and how can they minister to them in a positive way?
I would say the people that helped me positively were the ones who weren't telling me that it's because of some sort of sin I have in my life, or God trying to use it in a way that would steer me one way or another. They were the ones that would bring up like Philippians 4:6, where it says, don't be anxious, give all your worries and cares to God. And that's kind of my big turnaround point with dealing with anxiety, because for all of middle school, I thought it was something that I had done to myself, or that something was wrong with me. And while it is something wrong, it's not my fault or anything that would have been done like that. But as far as advice, I would say be patient with your friends that go through anxiety. They have to get to a point where they realize it's not their fault, because so many people tell them, it's something wrong with them that they're having to deal with. It's not. And so just be patient, talk to them, see what's going on, but don't expect an answer right away. Just keep asking. Don't let up on them.
That's good. So be patient. Don't just throw blame on someone, is what I hear you saying. And really, it sounds like a lot of just being there for a friend. And that can be a tough thing especially middle school, is getting beyond those conversations where it's about video games or about joking around, where it's, okay, I see something is actually going on in your life, and you have to have that boldness as a friend, right? As a friend, to reach out and be there for them. And that's what friendship is all about, is being there for each other. And so that was powerful. So I want to go now to you as far as how have you coped with anxiety? And you touched on it, talking about, don't be anxious about anything, but in everything, right? So it sounds like prayer is potentially been a way that has helped you deal with anxiety. Anything else that you would add, or if you wanted to elaborate on that at all, about how have you coped with anxiety?
Yeah, so the first thing I do when I have an anxiety attack coming on is try to find out where it's coming from, where the situations in my life that are causing it. And sometimes you don't always know where it's coming from, but the first thing I do is always dive into the Word and dive into praying, just to initially, give the anxiety from me trying to control it to giving it to God, to give Him the control over it. And then after that, finding the one or two people in my life that I trust, that I know aren't going to, blame me or try to come up with some crazy solution, that just is there to listen and to help me walk through it, instead of, come up to an easy solution right away. So yeah, the big thing is find people in your life who you can trust with anything to talk about.
That's good. So finding people that you can trust, finding those real friends, and man, those real friendships and connections in life, if you can grab onto those, they are so important. So that's good. In prayer, offering things to God, getting in the Word, you mentioned. Okay, very good. Last thing I want to ask is, what would you say to the young person who is dealing with anxiety? What advice would you offer to them?
Yeah, my advice I would offer would be, first, get to a place where you realize it's not your fault. This isn't something that you did to yourself or anyone necessarily did to you. Situations like that can arise, but it's not your fault. And to, like I talked earlier and Pastor Ben said, find somebody that you can talk to about it, because isolating yourself with it and dwelling on it, like I mentioned earlier, anxiety, it pushes almost your reasons of logic away, and just starts running through cycles of illogical events that could potentially happen, that are probably at a 99.9% chance will never happen, but your brain thinks it's like a 100% chance it'll happen. So somebody that you can talk those issues out with and talk those reasoning out with, because if you talk to someone and say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what's causing my anxiety, they can come back with the logic that your brain's not giving you at the moment and say, that's not right, this is, let's talk this out.
Yeah, that's really good. Getting past feeling the shame and the guilt, where it's you think, oh, this is whatever's wrong with me, I'm just a sinful person. That's true of many things in life, and being willing to step forward. And the truth is, we're all dealing with all kinds of things. Some of you are dealing with anxiety, and some of you aren't. Right? Some of you that are watching this video right now, you're dealing with depression, you're dealing with different things, and some of you aren't, and your struggle is something else. And the truth is, for all of us, we have to get past, the idea of feeling this sense of shame or guilt or whatever, and be willing to talk about it, because we're supposed to be a family. We're supposed to be with each other and encourage each other and challenge each other, but we can't do that unless we have a level of vulnerability and transparency with each other. But to do that, it can be very difficult. You have to kind of put yourself out there. You have to really trust someone. And it's not easy, but to find the courage to do it, to find those people that you can talk to, right? We're not telling you to go tell everybody in the world, but what's important is that we're honest with ourselves, we're honest with God, and we can be honest with someone in our life. Find someone that you can trust, that you can be honest with. But Luke, I want to thank you for sharing about your experience with anxiety. I think that was really good, so thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Zack, thank you for sharing us. You're going to be the last one with us here tonight. And we'll start off. Why don't you take a minute and share with us what your experience with depression or anxiety has been in your life?
Yeah, so I struggle with both depression and anxiety on a regular basis. Depression for me, I got started when I was in elementary school, when I was a lot younger. I was that kid that got bullied all the time because I don't know, I kept talking, or I wanted to be friends with, the popular people. I would always get called like the annoying kid, or most people who know me, I'm like big into I love Disney because Disney is dope. But I would always get teased for that. And so people would always make fun of me for that, or make fun of me because, I was a chubby kid, still am. But, in public, I would act like that didn't bother me. I would just put a mask on. But at home or in private, I would, it sucks. Those thoughts just keep going in your head. Maybe that's true. Maybe people don't actually really like me, and I have to change to impress people. So those thoughts have always just stuck in my head for over the years and stuff like that. But for anxiety, my anxiety really feeds off of stress mainly. If I get overly stressed, I'll just I feel like I can't breathe. I can't stop moving. I can't focus on literally anything. So I'm just a big, a mess. I just, not being able to breathe during that point just really sucks. And it doesn't stop until I either am able to calm down, or I can get myself into a quiet place where I can just clear my mind and just think about nothing. So yeah, that's really the two big things that I struggle with.
Okay, yeah, depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And what have been some ways that you have found helpful to deal with these things?
Yeah, for anxiety, like I said, being in a quiet place and just being in a peaceful atmosphere. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to step away from whatever is causing me stress. Most of the time that alone will help a lot. Other times I'll put on some prayer music in the background, because that just, whatever atmosphere I'm in, that always just makes it a peaceful atmosphere for me. But for my depression, being around people is what helps me out a lot. Being around people keeps my mind off of myself. It keeps my mind, on whatever we're doing. Going out to see a movie, which in this time we really can't.
Yeah.
But just hanging out with friends and just talking about stuff, and just doing activities just keeps my mind off of everything, and just keeps my mind moving and stuff like that, and keeps it away from all that. So yeah.
Good. So being with people, that human connection and interaction, and
Yeah.
talking with Luke and Deja here already tonight, especially Deja talked about how it can be the tendency to want to isolate yourself. Have you experienced anything like that?
Yes.
And how have you combated it? Have you just gone out and hung out with people just because you know you should, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so a lot of times if I'm depressed, I'll shut down. Sometimes it happens when I'm with people. The only time it happens when I'm with people is if we're just doing absolutely nothing. If we're just sitting there doing nothing, it happens a lot. But if I'm by myself already, just sitting at home, like, it happens a lot. So if I'm at home and it happens, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll try to come up with some idea to come up with like a video to edit or something like that to keep my mind off of it. Other times, if it's the weekend, I'll shoot a quick text to everybody and be like, hey, who wants to hang out? Who wants to do something? Like, literally anything. But, just being able to get out of, forcing myself to get out of, just doing nothing. Like being able to go out with friends, make a quick video or a design or something like that helps me, like, tremendously.
Yes, that's good. Again, it's pushing towards that human connection, those, investing in those friendships, even when you don't want to, it
Right.
seems like. And also, you mentioned another thing, which is, spending time doing the things that you love, which is, if you know Zack, you know that he loves doing video stuff, graphic design, and, finding those things in life that you do love and spending time doing that. So I think that's something that's really good as well.
Yeah.
So what would you say to someone who's dealing with whether depression or anxiety? What advice do you give them?
Dealing with depression and anxiety, it's not something to be ashamed of. It's really not. It's a very common thing these days. In fact, like, numbers just keep going up higher and higher each generation, it seems like. So really, if you have somebody that you trust, like, it can be a friend, family member, Pastor Ben, or just, somebody in the church, talk to them. It's really helpful. Being able, like, holding it in yourself, honestly, sometimes makes it worse. And I've talked to you before, like, we met up back in July when I was going through something hard, and just that one meeting, honestly, like, I felt like a relief come off of me. So having it be out there, at least with just one person knowing, it helps a lot, because you're not dealing it with yourself. You have somebody out there too who knows about it and who can talk to you when you need to. So yeah, just talk to somebody about it. Make it known to one or two people. It doesn't have to be every single person, but just make it a known thing to a couple people. That way, it's not just your burden you're carrying, but somebody can help you with a little bit of that weight too. And also take some time and just give it to God, because God takes our burdens and He takes our weight off of us and takes it for us. So
That's good. That's good. And sometimes when we just isolate ourselves, and Luke kind of touched on this as well, where we have that tendency to allow those thoughts, like, that aren't true, right? Like ridiculous thoughts, complete lies sometimes, and sometimes we need someone just to come in and speak truth, right? Like, not even anything super complicated, just speak truth, and beyond just us trying to convince it of ourselves. And it's so powerful inviting somebody else in, but that does take transparency, that does take vulnerability, and putting yourself out there, which is difficult. But doing that and understanding, like, you don't have to be alone. You don't have to go through anything alone. There's people that love you. There's people that care about you. Of course, here at the church, whether it's myself or these leaders, and then, these students, they care about you. And we need to know that as people, that we're not alone. We're a family. We're supposed to be a family united in Jesus. We're imperfect. Man, we're dysfunctional at times. But hopefully we can learn to love each other, forgive each other at times, and move forward. But this is something, talking about mental illness, depression, anxiety, where hopefully students, you're beginning to understand that you don't have to experience like this high level of shame, that you can come forward, you can get help, you can tell someone, you can be open, you can be honest, and we can be a family, the family that we're supposed to be, so we can find healing and restoration and hope and the life that God wants us to live. So, Zack, thank you very much for your input and insight. That was great. Thanks again for joining us. Remember, reach out if you need to. We're always available. Otherwise, we hope to see you guys next week in person on a Wednesday night. See you guys.